Have you ever noticed that the men women obsess over are rarely the men who give too much too soon? The kind man gets ignored, the available man gets replaced, the predictable man gets controlled, and the man who understands power, he becomes unforgettable. That sounds cruel, maybe even dangerous. But Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most people are too uncomfortable to admit. People rarely respect what they can completely control, and attraction is deeply connected to respect, tension, mystery, and emotional uncertainty. Most men are taught to please, to explain themselves, to chase approval, to sacrifice their pride in exchange for affection. Then they wonder why the attraction dies, because attraction is not built on obedience. It is built on emotional gravity. And tonight you're going to understand exactly why. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and stay until the end. Because the final lesson may completely change the way you see women, relationships, and power itself. Machiavelli once wrote that people are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and covetous. Harsh words. But he wasn't writing poetry. He was describing human behavior under emotion. And nowhere is emotion more dangerous than in attraction. The first lesson Machiavelli would teach is this: never become emotionally cheap. The modern world trains men to overexpose themselves. Constant texting, constant reassurance, constant validation. A man meets a woman and immediately gives her everything, his attention, his time, his emotions, his vulnerability, his availability, and at first she enjoys it. But slowly, something changes. She stops chasing, stops wondering, stops valuing, because mystery is gone. Human beings are wired to pursue what feels slightly out of reach. Not impossible, not cold, but difficult enough to create emotional investment. That is why powerful men often speak less, reveal less, react less. Silence creates tension, and tension creates obsession. The second lesson is even darker. Women often test men emotionally before they trust them, not logically, emotionally. She may challenge your confidence, question your decisions, ignore your message, mention another man, create emotional pressure just to observe your reaction, not always consciously, but instinctively, because people test strength before they surrender respect. Weak men become emotional during these moments. They panic, they explain themselves, they seek reassurance, but the man who understands power stays calm. He does not rush to defend himself. He does not beg for clarity. He watches, because emotional control is one of the rarest forms of dominance in modern society. Anyone can pretend to be strong when life is easy, but when tension enters the room, that is where hierarchy is revealed. Machiavelli understood this better than most psychologists alive today. Power is never proven through words, only through behavior under pressure. And women notice this constantly. The third lesson is brutal. People value what can walk away. Read that again. People value what can walk away. Most men are terrified of losing women, and because of that fear, they slowly lose themselves. They tolerate disrespect. Disrespect becomes compromise. Compromise becomes submission. Then one day they realize they are no longer loved, only tolerated. Machiavelli warned rulers never to appear weak through dependency, because dependency destroys leverage. And in relationships, emotional leverage matters more than people admit. The man who cannot leave becomes emotionally owned, but the man who respects himself enough to walk away from manipulation, disrespect, or games becomes dangerous. Not because he is cruel, because he is free. Freedom creates power. Desperation destroys it. And women feel desperation instantly. The fourth lesson is about attention. Attention is currency, and most men spend it like fools. A woman posts a photo. Hundreds of men rush to validate her. Compliments, reactions, approval. What happens? Attention loses value. But the man who is selective with his attention becomes psychologically different, because scarcity creates importance. Machiavelli understood scarcity long before social media existed. The rarest thing in any society becomes the most desired. And today, genuine masculine restraint is rare. Most men cannot control themselves emotionally. They react instantly, reply instantly, chase instantly. But patience creates intrigue. A calm man becomes difficult to read, and difficult to read people create psychological tension. That tension keeps people emotionally engaged. The fifth lesson may offend people. Women are often more attracted to a man's direction than his affection. A man without purpose becomes emotionally soft. His entire identity revolves around the relationship. He watches her constantly, needs her constantly, depends on her emotionally, and eventually, she feels it, the weight, the neediness, the pressure. A man with purpose behaves differently. His life does not orbit around one person. He has ambition, focus, discipline, standards. And ironically, that emotional independence often creates stronger attraction than romance itself, because power attracts attention naturally, not fake power, not arrogance. Real internal direction. Machiavelli believed people follow those who appear certain of themselves. Certainty creates security, and security creates attraction. The sixth lesson is where psychology becomes uncomfortable. Never reveal all your weakness too early. Modern culture glorifies instant vulnerability. People say, just open up. Tell her everything. Be completely transparent. But Machiavelli understood timing matters more than honesty itself. If you reveal every insecurity before trust is earned, people may unconsciously lose respect for your emotional stability. Human beings admire emotional depth, but they are disturbed by emotional chaos. There is a difference. A strategic man understands layers. He reveals himself slowly, carefully, with awareness. Not because he is fake, because he understands human perception. And perception controls reality more than truth does. The seventh lesson is about unpredictability. Predictable men become emotionally invisible. If she knows exactly how you will react every second, there is no tension left, no emotional movement, no curiosity. Machiavelli often used unpredictability as a weapon of power, because uncertainty keeps people psychologically alert. This does not mean playing childish games. It means maintaining emotional independence. Sometimes being unavailable, sometimes disappearing into your own mission, sometimes refusing to over-explain yourself. The modern world rewards oversharing, but mystery still controls human emotion, always has, always will. The eighth lesson is perhaps the most dangerous. Respect matters more than affection. Many men chase love while ignoring respect. Huge mistake, because without respect, affection eventually becomes manipulation. A woman may love your kindness, love your attention, love your loyalty, but if she stops respecting your boundaries, the relationship slowly rots from underneath. Machiavelli understood fear and respect better than anyone in history. Now listen carefully. This does not mean becoming abusive, cruel, or toxic. Weak men misunderstand power. They think dominance means aggression. No point. True power is emotional discipline, the ability to remain calm when others lose control, the ability to say no without guilt, the ability to maintain standards even when emotionally attached. That creates respect, and respect sustains attraction longer than charm ever will. The ninth lesson is about emotional reactions. Never reward manipulation with emotion. This is where most men fail completely. A woman withdraws attention. He panics. She becomes cold. He chases harder. She creates jealousy. He becomes emotional, and without realizing it, he trains himself to be controlled. Machiavelli believed whoever controls emotional reactions controls the relationship. Think about that. The person who stays emotionally grounded usually holds the power, because emotional stability is intimidating in a world addicted to reactions. When someone cannot shake your center, they begin to respect your mind. And finally, the 10th lesson. The strongest men are not controlled by lust. This is the lesson almost nobody teaches anymore. Most men are slaves to desire. A beautiful woman enters the room and suddenly logic disappears. Standards disappear, self-respect disappears, and women know this. They know most men can be manipulated through attention, beauty, validation, and emotional seduction. But the rare man who controls himself terrifies people, because self-control is power in its purest form. Machiavelli admired men who mastered themselves before trying to master the world. And that is the real message hidden underneath all of this. These lessons were never truly about controlling women. They are about controlling yourself, because the moment a man becomes emotionally desperate, he becomes weak. Easy to manipulate, easy to replace, easy to destroy, but the man who masters silence, discipline, detachment, patience, purpose, moves differently. People feel it immediately. His presence becomes heavier. His words become rarer. His approval becomes valuable. And suddenly, the same world that ignored him begins chasing him. Not because he begged for attention, because he stopped needing it. That is the paradox Machiavelli understood centuries ago. The people who crave power rarely keep it. The people who control themselves naturally attract it. And maybe the darkest truth of all, women do not always fall for the nicest man. They often fall for the man who understands human nature better than everyone else in the room. The man who stays calm while others panic. The man who cannot be emotionally cornered. The man who values respect more than validation. The man who knows when to speak, and when silence is more powerful. Because deep down, human beings are drawn toward strength. Not loud strength. Not fake alpha behavior. Quiet strength. Controlled strength. Dangerous calmness. And once you understand that, you stop chasing attention. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop surrendering your dignity just to keep someone interested. You become selective, strategic, unshakable. And ironically, that is when people start fearing your absence more than your presence. Machiavelli would smile at that, because he knew something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Human nature does not reward weakness. It tests it, constantly. And the people who survive those tests are usually the ones who learned how to master emotion before emotion mastered them. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.